Welcome to 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. The podcast that covers all things about humans, technology, and particularly the bits in between. Welcome to 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. The podcast that covers all things about humans, technology, and particularly the bits in between.
And welcome to this episode of 1202, the Human Factors Podcast, with me, your host, Barry Kirby. Hopefully everyone is getting used to the new decor with the sounds and the website and the shiny social media. And a huge thank you to everyone who's emailed and messaged me complimentary messages, and yeah, also to those of you who's highlighted some of my spelling mistakes as well. We all know what Barry's like for spelling, so anything you find like that, please do let me know. It makes me produce better quality. The website will be an evolving beast, so do keep on getting back in touch with if there's any extra sections you want to see. I've had somebody feedback and ask that they would like to know how I set up and deliver the podcast, so I'll be able to put some details on there about the equipment that I use and the software that I use and the vague sort of process that I pull together. And so if that's of interest, there'll be a page on there going on soon. I've been back on Human Factors Cast with Nick Rome and friends, and they've been coming on with some really interesting news articles as well as sections from the internet and us offering our advice for what it's worth. As ever, it's been recorded live, so between midnight and 2 a.m. on a Friday morning for UK time. Then do drop in on the chat, on the live streams, because the way that they've got it set up, there is any of the sort of comments come through to the stream, and we can basically interact with you. So feel free to keep on doing that. Anyway, back to this episode. The guest for today is very much on a wavelength with what I'm thinking I'm playing with in the whole climate ergonomics and human-centered activities, because the human-centered activities, be that human factors and ergonomics, engineering or design, are at the core of what we're trying to deal with on pressing issues of today. Today's guest is the founder and CEO of the Peterman design firm, a product design firm based in the LA in the United States. His focus is on developing better ways to create products that benefit people and the planet. He launched the Peterman method of design in 2020, and is here today to talk about his book, Conscious Design, which has just launched. Welcome to the podcast, Ian Peterman.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thank you very much for coming along. I recognise that it's sort of mid-morning for you, where it's late evening for me. I'm still getting used to interviewing people on different time zones, and it's quite good fun. But let's talk more about you. Your current role, you're CEO of your own company, a Peterman design firm. What is it you do on a day-to-day basis?
My day-to-day is a lot of meetings and calls and talking with clients and project managing. I have a team, so I do all the management and businessy things of a design firm these days.
So what sort of things do you design? Because you are, as you say, you're a design firm. What sort of thing? What's your typical client? Do you have a typical client?
We don't have a typical client. So I've kind of intentionally worked across the board. I actually personally started in designing lasers, and then I moved to printers and then speakers. And as a design firm and over our career, we've done everything from baby products to industrial equipment. Worked on a refueling truck, smart products. Right now, IoT products are a booming area. So we have three clients that are in the IoT space right now, and more talking to us. So we're kind of all over the board in terms of design industry. We're industry agnostic, as I like to say.
Oh, that's really so. Yeah, so you've got a really broad range of interest then, and a broad range of activity.
Yes, yeah. We're broad in many ways.
That sounds like a bit of a leading comment. So, how did you get into the whole product design thing? What led you down this route?
This has been something since I was a kid I wanted to do. So this has been really kind of just my life. I don't have anything else that I want to be doing. I started as a kid. I went to college for it. I got an internship when I was 16 in design. It's really just been my entire life, and it's really just from a desire to make really cool products. when I was a kid, I was drawing cool products. I wasn't really thinking about how to make them. Pretty sure none of them were actually makeable.
That's the best sort.
Yeah, exactly. I probably could have worked on like a James Bond movie or something for some of their gadgets. But yeah, it's just been a lifelong mission for me.
Okay. Was there a particular moment or a particular event that made you click into that way, or is it just something that you've just almost from birth? It's just been there. Was there something that was a bit of inspiration?
I can't put a finger on an actual inspiration point. It's been literally some of my youngest memories are I was drawing like trucks and I was designing cars, and then it was submarines, and then it was spaceships, and I watched far too much Star Trek and Star Wars, and that just led to more and more design of things that I could think of. There's a lot of space design. I've designed spaceships for fun for decades at this point.
Cool.
So yeah, it's really kind of, I don't remember not having a desire to develop products.
Cool. So you're now CEO of Peterman Design. What's been your career path to get here? If you've always had that interest, you did your initial training. What's been the stops along the way?
Yeah, so I started interning at a company designing lasers. So I worked there for a few years, and then I took on a few different contracts. I worked in custom cabling for a while. I worked at HP. I was a designer for a time as well. I worked for a company called Barefoot Sound, studio monitor for recording studios.
Mm-hmm.
And so worked in the music and sound industry. And then I ended up starting a design firm with a few partners. That's where I got exposed to a lot of the other parts of products, outside of engineering, the branding and marketing and everything else you do to make a product actually happen. And so I got a lot of experience from that. I learned quite a bit of those different areas. We did that for about 3 years, and then took a little hiatus. I just worked for a company that made Roner Mechanical. They design the big ovens if you want to paint and bake an entire Boeing 747 wing at once. They're the people who build the oven.
Fair enough.
So I did that for a little while, and then I started this company just because I wanted to get back into working on more than just one kind of product at a time, and that's been a theme my entire life. I'm not really sit at HP for 30 years designing the same printers over and over again. I like dabbling in different areas.
Cool. We've had the COVID-19 pandemic, and there's been various bits of lockdown and all these sort of things. How have you found working during the pandemic? Has it been good for business, bad for business? Have you learned anything about yourself on the way?
Yeah, so we were. It was kind of interesting before the pandemic. People that worked remotely was still a little bit of a weird thing. I still had to spend quite a bit of time convincing people I could actually do work without seeing them in person. So we were fully remote, which was good. But the bad part is we lost about 80% of our clients in the first 3 months of the pandemic, because we worked primarily with startups and smaller businesses. And so that was a pretty harsh hit. And then it took about a year, and then it started picking back up. And now there's more work than ever before. So we're already doing better than before pandemic at this point. So
wow.
I'd say we've made a drastic recovery, and very solid. We're growing. We've doubled our team in the last 6 months. So it's been a journey, and it's been definitely an interesting process of talking with people and seeing how many different viewpoints there are on things, and the business world, how many different ways there have been to react to something like this. And the biggest impact that people still are feeling in the product world is the supply chain.
Right.
been decimated. And so it's something that we've had to learn along with our clients even, is how to manage, because it's something that people that have 40, 50 years experience in supply chain have never seen before. This is uncharted territory for even the veterans. So it's kind of an interesting place to be in figuring out how do you make a product, because there's so many people wanting to launch new products still right now. Yeah. Right. So we're just adding to it. So that's actually been a topic every week since it started, how to make the supply chain work.
So you found yourself having to become experts in more than you were before in many ways.
Oh, definitely. I knew supply chain pretty well because I've built those for companies before, but not in a situation like this.
But I guess it just shows that there is, in all of these things, yes, COVID-19 has been decimating for quite a lot of people, but there's also an awful lot of opportunity if you open yourself up to it.
There's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of new challenges that different industries are facing in different ways, and that it's as bad as COVID-19 has been, it also has created a lot of opportunity to solve problems. And I think that's something that not everyone can or has been able to look at in a positive way. But when you do, and you take that step back, it's amazing the amount of problems we have to fix, and they need to be fixed. So it's something that we've been, okay, well, how do we work on supply chain better, and different areas like that need more work and more expertise put into it.
So before we get in and talk about the book, I was stalking your your LinkedIn profile, and it turns out you're a competition fiddler. Yes. What is competition fiddling, and how did you get into it, and how serious is it?
It gets pretty serious. There's, in the US, they go up to national, so you have local, regional, and then national competitions. I was a Scottish fiddler, so I played at Highland Games and competitions like that. And I started playing when I was 8, and I started competing when I was, I think, about 12. And when I was about 15, I started winning regionals.
Cool.
And so it was dedication. There was a lot of time put into hours and hours every week to get to that level.
And is this still something you keep up with now, or is it now just in a hobby, or do you just look back on it fondly?
It's kind of a hobby, but I'm a pretty competitive person. So when I say hobby, it means that I occasionally get it out, and then I practice heavily for a while, and then I realize that I need to do something else. But yeah, I get it out every now and then. I don't compete anymore, right?
Okay, but I can honestly say you're the first competition fiddler we've had on this podcast. So no, that's really insightful. Right, we're going to come back and talk about your new book straight after this break.
You are listening to 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. We wanted to take the opportunity to say thank you for your support. You can help further by rating us through your podcast provider, sharing us through social media, and telling your friends and colleagues. Let's work together in raising awareness of the value in putting users at the center of what we do.
So, you've just managed to launch a book, which is no mean feat in itself. It's called Conscious Design. What is conscious design?
Conscious design is, if you imagine taking human-centered design and sustainability and social consciousness, so being aware of the social impact, and putting it all into one thing, and really looking at it's really just taking a step farther back on especially tangible products, because they make the most impact to us, our environment, the planet, our social experience even. And so the whole point of conscious design is to take an extra step back and say, what are all the impact points? How does this product that we're trying to create impact us environmentally? How does it impact us socially? How does it impact us financially? How does it really impact, and the supply chain, not just you. It's from the time a raw material is gotten somewhere. It's typically mined, or it's planted and grown and harvested. It comes from somewhere. And there's a lot of people that touch that product in some way, and people don't think about that even today as much as I think people should. And there's a great example. I think it's the Ticonderoga pencil. People think of it, right? It's 4 pieces. It's an eraser, a metal band, a wood, and the actual lead. And it comes from like 4 different countries, and it passes through like 10 or something just to get to you. And it's like 100 people are involved to make one pencil. And so that's something that we and being in the design world, we brush aside. We're like, oh, well, don't worry about that. There's too much to think about. And in today's world, I don't think that we can just ignore it. And so that's conscious design, is trying to pull all of those elements together and say, like, hey, let's actually think about what we're doing here, start to finish, the cradle to cradle or cradle to grave, whichever one. But let's think about those things. Let's make some decisions early on and make it happen in a way that we want to, and realizing that it should be a conscious decision when you go to design something, don't just let it happen. It's going to happen no matter what, but be conscious about it.
So is there not a potential risk there of you get, because it'd be quite easy to almost take any product, I guess, and, go back through that supply chain element and almost become paralyzed by fear of doing something wrong. How do we step people through? Because you don't want that paralysis, but like you say, you want to be thoughtful about the impact that you're having and what you're doing. How do we make sure that people can actually progress with developing and designing and developing what they're doing, and not just either throw everything away because it's too difficult or just ignore it completely?
Well, I think the key is actually word you use, progress. It's not. There's an expectation, because we live in an instant world, right? I expect to instantly be able to message people, instantly be able to buy things. Amazon can get stuff to you in a day or two, right? We live in this very moment-based reality. And so the way to work through that is that it is a process. You're not going to launch a product, even today. I would say, even if you had an unlimited budget, the idea that you could launch a perfectly perfect product that had 0 negative impacts to anyone, only positive across the entire supply chain, it's not possible today. Yeah. It's that is I wouldn't call it a pipe dream, because it's possible, but it is a ways away from being real. Yeah. And so I think it's not to overwhelm, it's to go, okay, well, how do we break down all of these different impacts? How do we break down the supply chain and start somewhere? And I think that's the biggest thing, is that people do get, what you said, people do get afraid, like, oh, well, I'm overwhelmed. Like, this is too much. And that's kind of what we've done. We've been overwhelmed. And so we ignore it. And that's not working. That's not working out for anybody at all. And so breaking it down and just going through systematically and even creating a roadmap of, okay, well, these are our goals and we're going to get there. And even, I was just talking to someone about Apple. If you look at over the last decade, Apple set some insanely lofty goals for their sustainability. Yeah. And a decade ago, people were like, oh, you're crazy. Well, they've been working on it slowly, year by year. And a decade later, they just did a presentation. Some of those things on their list, because they've been showing the same list for 10 years, some of them have been checked off. So, and that's Apple. They have billions of dollars. They're able to put a lot of resources toward it. So it's really just creating that process and going through the steps of aiming towards it. Because if we don't ever start to aim towards it, we'll never get there. If we don't start the journey. So it's a process.
And you're right. Yeah. Okay. Companies like Apple are minted, and smaller companies aren't, but the process is the same. we're not going to get anywhere unless you've got the ambition to do so. And if you, I guess, as much of that is about setting up the right, the right leadership, the right foundation of the business to say, right, we are going to have this product. It is going to be a sustainable product, and through its lifetime, people will have, people will come up with better parts of it, or either product elements or better design elements, manufacturing elements, and just being open to say, right, well, that's improved now, we can incorporate it. I guess that's where you're coming from as much as anything else.
Yeah, and I think that the other roadblock that people have still is that it's too expensive and it's not going to be financially stable, right? A lot of people, like startup companies, are like, oh, we're worried about sustainability later. Like, we just need a product to be profitable. And I think there's all that myth needs to be broken down more. It is profitable to be sustainable. It's profitable to be thinking about your employees, and things like that. It is profitable, and there's plenty of companies that are doing really good. Patagonia is one that's pretty well known for how much they do for environmental things, and they're pretty big. They're doing well. No one's complaining about their stocks.
Well, yeah.
So it's also that of it's profitable, and do it step by step. You don't need to, bury yourself with all the goals at once.
Yeah. No, that's. I think that's probably a massive takeaway, isn't it? Of aim big, but it doesn't matter almost how long it takes you to get there, as long as you keep on the path. This book has brought together your work in design, but also Jessica's work as a healer and study of regenerative technologies. Jessica is your wife. How does that combination work?
It's an interesting combination because I'm very technology future forward focused as much as possible. That's where I live. I'm developing new things, and her studies have been in more, ancient Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine from India, and looking at how they thought of things. And so it brings, thinking about how people used to build things and how people used to grow things. And, one of the things that we've looked at and there's modern version is, regenerative farming and things like that, where it's using older techniques, mixing it with modern technology and being able to produce something better. And I think there's, a lot of people still kind of look backwards and they go, oh, well, we shouldn't pull any inspiration from there. It's old. Yeah. And that's a very American way to do it. We bulldoze our buildings right before they hit the age where they get protected as a historic monument. And I think that, basically our combination is going, well, there's a lot of stuff to think about. There's a lot of other ways to think about things. Yeah. And when you blend that with things that we know now of, quantum mechanics and, things like that, it creates a little bit of a unique standpoint, and it opens up some doors to looking at things differently. And that's kind of the point of the whole book, is look at things a little bit differently. Like, don't put the blinders on. Cool. And so, yeah, that's the blend that happens.
So I'm also interested in the relationship to a certain extent, because the business I run with my wife as well. And how did you find that whole collaborative exercise of coming together that, and who stopped talking to who first? And don't tell me there wasn't some sort of argument along the way, otherwise I'll just call you out.
No, there's been some disagreements, but it really kind of started as, I built a design firm, and she was basically, started out as a sounding board. Mm-hmm. And, that's, I have this idea. What do you think? And then it's slowly just morphed into, I've, at this point, can't run the business without her. So it's very much a partnership. It's, having somebody who's not super in the tech world, being able to bounce things off of definitely outside view is very valuable, and it's something that, when you're working in it, you can't see what you're in sometimes.
Yes.
Having that has been hugely beneficial, and I definitely attribute success to having that outside sounding board to double check and go, nope, that seems really weird. What are you doing? What are you doing there? Think about that a little bit.
It's nice to see almost another partnership that's worked well, because I guess I'm in a similar position that having been very doubtful 10 years ago about whether we could work together, and we sort of knew that we could, because we sort of did our degree together, did the same degree and all that sort of stuff. But then when you're into the business world, it's slightly different, and we do have our moments. But it's really nice to see another couple who's doing a similar thing. Let's get back to the book. When in sort of the description of the book, you talk about I guess changing out how other people see the world. So how do you see the world at the moment? What is it? Who is best fit to change it? And basically, how do we make that happen?
Oh, who's best fit to change it? Probably all the people we're not looking at right now to change it. I think that there's a lot to say about, the diversity and inclusion movement that people are being aware of. And I think that actually is part of the key to making the world better. Is there's a lot of people that haven't been given a stage and haven't been even talked to or put in a conversation. And that is where I think that we will find the solutions to problems that we have now, or even moving forward. Like, what the Billionaires Club are all doing right now is trying to get into space as quickly as possible. Those kinds of lofty missions, if you call them, I think that those are great, and I think that we need to solve some of the problems we have on Earth while we're going at it. But it's something that the whole different perspective piece is a huge part of how I run my business, because I pull in designers from different fields, and I'll stick a toy designer on a IoT product, and you get some different ideas when you pull people from different areas. And so that's kind of my perspective on the world, is that we need more of that. We need less siloing. Especially the business world, we've been siloed as, this is the engineering department, this is the electrical department, that's sales. And then there's one point of contact in between them, and hopefully they get it right. But really it's playing telephone, and nobody gets it right. And I think that kind of thinking is starting to go away, but the faster it goes away, the better cross-pollination of ideas, the sooner we're going to have somebody go, I've figured out how to generate all the energy we want without burning anything. There you go. Right. So I think that's kind of my opinion of where we're at, and how I think we can get there fastest.
So really, to be doing a lot of this, we need to be influencing other people. How do you think we can best go around doing that? I
mean, voting with your money it always works in some level, right? And I think it's also being able to have good communication. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of preachy people that make it so that, talking about a topic of any level becomes a problem, because nobody wants to be preached at.
Yeah.
And so I think it really comes down to being honest and having just open communication of, hey, this is what I think. What do you think? And making it a conversation, and less, how do I influence everyone to get my way out of this? It should be, how do I talk to someone and share what I think, and then listen to what they think, and then see where it goes from there. And I think that's the best way to move forward without trying to bulldoze anybody with, this is the way, and I've decided.
So alongside the book, because you also run your own podcast as well, hence why you're such a smooth talking veteran on this. Can you tell us a bit about the podcast as well?
So the podcast, same name, Conscious Design, its focus is really on finding those people with ideas and solutions and experience that haven't been given a voice elsewhere. I do have some people that have been on that, a little bit more well-known, their social media followers are a little bit bigger, but my focus is really on the people who probably, most of the time, they've never been on a podcast before. They have not written a book. They are not, the person the world CEOs call to talk to. There are people that actually work and actually do and have different ideas about how things could work, or their thoughts on, how do we create more conscious design? How do we make architecture more, human-centered? Because apparently that's not actually a huge part of architecture. Explains our buildings a lot.
Yes, that's true.
So it's really to try to give a voice and a platform for that to get people to hear other ideas that could be great. They could be okay, but it's a different opinion. It's a different outlook than what we're all used to hearing from, all the same 100 people on other podcasts.
Cool. So go and find that the Conscious Design podcast as well. Once you finish listening to this, not before. So where most fundamentally, the book Conscious Design. Where can we go? Where can we find it?
You can go to consciousdesignbook.com is where you'll find the book itself, and then the design firm is petermanfirm.com.
Brilliant. And we'll make sure that them links are in the show notes to this. So, as a quick note before we finish, if you're looking to submit to the CIHF conference this year, you'll have missed out on the long paper deadline. But the short paper deadline is still open, and that's going to be mid-January. It's only 2 pages, and you can be sharing what you've done or you are doing. Get some feedback from like-minded people, but fundamentally contributing your knowledge to the human factors ether, that bit out there, that whole body of knowledge. And fundamentally, if you're going to conference as well, it's a good opportunity to get together, because there is going to be the virtual, but there is actually going to be the live conference this year or next year, all being well. And quite frankly, I'm well overdue a pint. But by now, the guide from the CIHF on climate ergonomics for business should be available, which I've spent the past few months writing. And so if that will be distributed on social media links everywhere, freely available. And it'd be great to hear your feedback on it. Ian, thank you very much for your time today. If people want to get hold of you and to find out more about conscious design, how can they contact you?
Best way to do that is find me on LinkedIn, just Ian Peterman. You'll find me pretty easily, but we are also Peterman Firm on any social media. If you contact us there, it'll get to me.
That's fantastic, and we'll make sure that your contact details are also in the show notes again today. Ian, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me. It's been wonderful.
Thank you for listening to 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. Please do get in touch with your thoughts, questions, and comments. You can contact us on social media such as Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook at 1202 Podcast. See you next time. And remember, it's more than just common sense. Thank you for listening to 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. Please do get in touch with your thoughts, questions, and comments. You can contact us on social media such as Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook at 1202 Podcast. See you next time. And remember, it's more than just common sense.